Everyone, KP here, bringing you another KP Talks. This time right before Raleigh. Um, just wanted to throw out a couple hot takes and opinions of what I think the meta is and is kind of going towards. And I'm curious what everybody else thinks. And I'm also here to kind of react on what I've seen with others' opinions about the meta. So let's start with in my opinion, the two biggest outliers, which is the Iodius and Chaos decks. Um, I'll pull up Materia Hunter here real quick. So, which one to start with? Well, I guess I'll just say like this in general. I feel like with this set, uh, the Chaos deck is the most the most powerful deck in the format, but it comes at a cost, right? It comes at a cost of a ton of dark cards. And there's also consistency issues. And it's also very one dimensional. You play your chaos, you know what it's going to do in the first couple turns, you know it's going to do the whole game. And because of all that, those are weaknesses. Those you can literally predict what's going to happen and you can prepare for it. So that comes at the deck building stage. And I think the same thing comes with Hythlodius combo. You can predict what they're trying to do and prepare for it. Now, you're not always going to have the cards you need in your opening hands, but that's card games, right? The same thing can happen to them. They might not always have the cards that they need. And I think what people are scared of right now are those decks going off on the first turn, maybe the second turn. But I also think that let's start with one at a time. So the Chaos deck is your pure traditional hyper aggressive deck. Um, it can be all in on turn one. It can wait. It can try to, win on turn two. There actually is a turn one win out there as well, but I don't think that's in the public yet. And I don't know if it's good enough yet, but I just thought I'd point that out there. It does exist. Um, and yeah, I think that it's pretty clear cut that it has one glaring weakness, and it's like EX burst, right? Or just interaction on turn one. Literally just everything can interact with it, right? You can Kuchulin a Raijin, you can Ixion, you can use any removal summon on the Raijin. Uh, you can use Summon Shiva, the new Shiva can prevent damage taken and dual free something. That's not unreasonable, although I haven't seen too many ice decks outside of Knights. But my point is that there's a lot of interaction on the first turn that we could be playing. Now the difference comes with what if you don't know that you're playing against chaos? Well, that's just how it works sometimes, right? You're going to be in the dark. It's going to be blind sometimes. You're just not going to know. So in those situations, you have to kind of respect that it exists. And because it exists, you need to bring a deck to the table that you're okay, keeping sketchy-ish hands just to make sure you don't lose the chaos, or having scenarios that you can get bailed out with cards like Love 6 or Luna Freya to hit Love 6, things like that. At the Materia Cup in Portland, I was commentating, and one of the first claims I made was I feel like the meta was going to start with EX Burst versus Chaos. And I feel like it's like that still, but a little more opened up. So let's just go to the Materia Cup here. I guess I'll just start at the top also. So Ryan here played Mono Earth And he didn't play too many EX bursts, but what he did play is what I was mentioning before, which is Luna Freya and Lev 6. So I think that one of Earth's weaknesses in the past was making sure, like, if you died before you got to 4 or 5 backups, right? Before you could go Leo Wall or go shenanigans, do your shenanigans, right? Get your Ignis out there and all that kind of stuff. Losing before that. And I bet this still has that weakness in some circumstances, but now you have like the bailout of Lev 6. So, and it's not free to play, but it kind of is free to play because like you're probably playing Garnet, Une, and Warrior Light anyways. So why not, right? So it's a really interesting take to combat the Chaos deck as well as other aggro decks that exist. This is another Lev 6 deck for second. Another Lev 6 deck. Actually, Lev 6 is the most played card here. But yeah, like, I guess that's my point is the decks are either aggressive or they are decks to counter the aggressive decks. And with that in mind, I kind of feel like decks like Wall 7 are kind of dead because if you're not doing something as fast or as aggressive as the high flow combo or chaos, or if you're not hand dumping kind of a thing, if you're not going all in, then I think that you're at a disadvantage. Whereas like with Wall 7, like there's a couple scenarios here. Let's say if you go first and you play a backup for Wall 7 and you're planning to play Wall 7 on turn 2, normal strategy, no big deal. Um, then if your opponent's doing their chaos thing, whatever, you discard 2, you should still be able to Wall 7, right? But let's say you take like 4 damage. Your Wall 7 deck likely plays somewhere between 0 to 5 bursts. Very, very small amount. And you're probably jamming the Wall 7, right? So let's make sure, we hope we don't draw a second Wall 7. Let's start with that. Second of all, we probably won't have the special for the Wall 7 whenever we go off. Third of all, we need to guarantee hitting good things. If we hit 2 backups, we might just lose. If we hit bad forwards, we might just lose. So we also are, for the most part, a like main phase oriented deck. So, it's permissions given kind of a thing, as in you do what you want to do, you let your opponent do what they want to do. And that was kind of okay last format when you were probably doing the best thing on your main phase, right? I don't think Wall 7's doing the best thing in the game anymore. I think that Chaos and Hythlodeus combo are much stronger in terms of, if in other games we say something like 2 ships passing in the night, if you're not interacting with each other, if you're letting them do what they want to do, Wall 7's not the best thing to be doing anymore. So I don't know if it's a good deck anymore. It's hard to say. Anyways, now let's do the other side of the Chaos and Wall 7 thing. Let's say you go second with Wall 7. So the Chaos deck, let's say they go off. They play their Chaos and they special twice again. It's just on average, whatever. Hit Fujin Raijin and attack you twice. So like that's 4 damage on turn 1. You discarded 2. You go to your turn. You go back up to 5 cards. I hope you have Wall 7 and I hope you hit. Right? Because what else are you doing? That's kind of my point with Wall 7 is it's really rough out there, especially if you're going second. Which you'll be going second 50% of the time. So, yeah. All that being said, again, I think a lot of this stuff is kind of predictable. You can prepare for it at the deck building stage of the game, but that also puts strain on what decks you're bringing to the event. And that's not always a bad thing. A lot of times that promotes interaction, But what is a little rough is when you're promoting interaction, but it's as early as turn one. That can be pretty backbreaking in a game where you want to play your backups. So yeah, you're gonna. I think where I'm at with this game right now is it's very tempo oriented, and you should basically only play backups when both players are allowing it to happen. Otherwise, you're trying to stop the player that has like an unfair kind of strategy going on. But you also need to stop them and then win the game, or else they're just going to keep doing it, right? So, all right. Now for high flow combo, which I'm just going to go back to the Portland. Oh, there should be another that they want Swiss, which there's a bunch of lists out there, but this is just, I'm just going to use this as an example here. So a lot of people are scared of the turn one nuts, right? You can, if you're going second, you can Emmet Selch. If you have Emmet Selch and a way to give it haste, then you can play Emmet, go get Hythlodeus, play Hythlodeus, and then use your haste, whether it's Goblin or Corel or Jellyfish. There's other ways also to give your Hythlo haste, but that's your entire hand. And then try to go off and hit your 4 cards. Now, I don't think that this is unfair on turn one. I think that this is all in. I think that there are a lot of ways to interact. I think it's a very how do I say this? Privileged to think that, your 1 card answer should always answer their 7 card hand kind of a thing. But a lot of cards can do that, right? They don't have any protection. They don't have the Cleone set up in this deck. So, cards like Amo, you can Amo the Emmet Selch, right? Or if you want to Kukulin, you can Kukulin and then have a removal spell the next turn. Or just have, like, I don't know, an Ifrit or Bahamut or any of those summons that can kill stuff, right? Titan, anything. Now, something else that people are saying is the nuts, right? It's like you go turn 1 back up, turn 2 realm, turn 3 go for the combo. Realming for Cleone and then going for the combo and saying that's too strong, and you just lose the game on turn 3. I think that is extremely not great, and I think it's kind of crazy that people are thinking that's very good. I think it was good on the first week at the first tournament, all that kind of stuff. But I think from here on out, it goes downhill. Let's just start with Cleon. Well, Cleon is good. I think it is a lot worse after the first event, literally because there are ways to interact that, especially not on turn 1, like this is trying to go off on turn 3, right? There are ways to interact that are not summons. It's that simple, There are a lot of ways to interact that are not summons. And even if you want to use summons, you can interact and then just, play a cheaper summon first and then play your summon that matters, right? I think it's literally just as simple as that. Also, in both scenarios of going off on turn 1 and on turn 3, you have a fail rate, and you can't really dismiss that. Both for the Chaos and this high flow deck, I think that people are pretty attached to the success / fail rate of the deck. They remember the feel bad and the feel good if you're playing with the deck, right? They remember the highs and the lows, and what I used to do a while back while testing with decks, I do it every once in a while still, is when preparing for an event, I would write down every single matchup I played, why I won or why I lost, what turn it was, is there a specific card that was a problem? Um, did I do what I wanted to do? Did I have to deviate my strategy? Things like that. And I think that taking all those kinds of notes are very important for a deck like this deck or like the Chaos deck, because I feel like emotions can get attached to the feel bad and the feel good, right? It can be, or you reveal four with this deck, and then let's say you just like flop garbage, like like two Kolka, whatever. I can't really see off the top of my head, like two of the same card, right? That's like really bad. By the way, like I don't think people realize how actually bad that is. If you reveal two Kolka, they both like sure they both come to play and they'll both trigger and then they'll both go to the break zone. So, um, yes, you'll get the search with the Kolkas, but that's still not good enough. Same thing. Like what? I mean, imagine if you reveal two Warrior Lights. Your two Warrior Lights. Yes, is that rare? Sure, but that's not what you're aiming for, right? So there is a fail rate, and a lot of this comes at the deck building stage of the game, which you can only do so much for in a deck like this because you want cards that are either non-unique or you want one-ofs because you don't want to hit the same names over and over again. But there's only so many cards. Like the more one-ofs you have, the less consistent your deck is. So like you want all these cards that get you two or more cards, right? Like Cindy and Vanille, and Ophelia. Those get you two cards back. But and you want more of them, but you can't play more of them because if you hit two of them at the same time, it can be backbreaking and make you lose your combo turn. So there's that tension there. I've been playing with a version like this without Cleon and with Noct and the Kingsglaive guys, because um, similar to the Chaos deck, I think this deck doesn't have a plan B really. Uh, the Chaos deck, at least you do your plan A stuff, and then plan B, I guess nowadays is Gilgamesh, right? That's basically it. Um, but I would argue that's kind of plan A for the most part still too. But whatever. Doesn't apples and oranges. Uh, I guess my point is that like if you with this deck, if you fail to get Hythlodius and Emmet together and combo off, what are you doing? So what I'm currently doing is playing Noct. Is it great? No, but it is acceptable. I think it is an acceptable plan B. And it also, in a way, helps plan A. Uh, if you're doing Diana stuff, you uh, are not only like cheating out forwards, which if you want to attack, you can. Sometimes I don't even attack because it just depends on the matchup. If I get bursted, I just lose immediately. So I'll just wait because this deck's gonna win in one turn anyways. You're gonna do 7 to them anyways. So don't. There's no reason to nickel and dime them with damage. Um, but Diana can dole your warrior darknesses and stop them from doing their stuff, right? So that's pretty cool. Also, if you hit knocked off of the combo, then it's like drawing 3 cards, which is really, really good. So I still don't know if it's the right way to go, but that's just where I'm at. I'm also not necessarily a believer in Realm for Cleon. I know Realm's really good because it gets you your haste uh, monsters, and also it is arguably like another way to draw cards, right? Because the Coughlin draws you cards. But I'm still not a believer in Cleon at the moment, just because I think at the highest caliber of events that people are going to respect Cleon and they're going to have other ways to interact. So if that's the case, then I'd rather just not play Cleon and just play other cards instead. So, Chaos. Hmm. What to say about chaos? I think there's a lot of discussion going around about whether this is like healthy for the game or if the other deck's healthy for the game. Um, I've seen people talking about, is it good or bad for the game, and also are they good or bad decks? And I think those are two separate things. Um, and I will say, whether it's good or bad for the game or not, or if like there was a claim that was if you play against the Hythlodius deck and they do their thing, one player, whether it's the combo player or not, one player is not going to have a good time, right? So that makes it not a good game. And I think that that's a little ambitious of a take. I think that people sign up with decks that they want to play, period. So I think it's a little bit rude to basically, you're not telling your opponent that they're playing a deck that, isn't fun for the game, but you should you should just let people play what they want to play. I think it's just that simple. So they sign up with something, they traveled for something, let them do what they want to do. Yeah, you can have an opinion on it, but it's also like it is legal in the format. It's part of the game. It is what it is. Suck it up, right? So until something changes, this is the game that we're playing. And I think that's the same thing for chaos, right? Now, is this a direction that we want Final Fantasy to go in? I think it's something that, let's put it this way too, though. Both the spawn of both these decks have pushed a lot of things around. Um, Four Color Wall, for example, Refia is like nowhere in sight, and I think a lot of that is because you're not getting to four backups. You're not setting up critical mass. That's just not happening. Uh, I think wind is like an unplayable color right now. Unplayable elements. What's the best? Maybe Firewind might be the best because literally because of Zidane. But I wouldn't be playing like Storm. I think Wind is literally just outclassed by the speed of the game at the moment, and that's also why I think Four Color Wall with Refia is kind of going away for the moment. I do know that there are people trying out. It's in a way the Four Color Wall deck's kind of regressing. People are going back to the EX backups like King Tycoon, Lena, um, or Claris, and then like Edgar for Kings and all that. And then just playing Cecil's again, just because that speed matters, right? Uh, Sometimes just playing Wind Cecil into Four Color Wall is a brick wall. Sometimes that's all you need, right? Um, but being able to adapt and also not having to play 20 backups in your deck, and also those the Warrior Light Tribal deck is very cluttery, and we can't really afford to be cluttery in this game right now. Also needing to interact, also the bursts mattering in senses of like this chaos deck's making you discard two cards on turn one, right? You got to get that card advantage back in some way. So it's interesting to see in that sense kind of like a regression of the deck because it's probably more playable. Um, there's probably some other four color wall decks out there like the FF10 version or something that could probably be played as well. But I don't think the Refia version, the FF10 version might fall into the same category as um, the Refia version because you want FF10 characters, but maybe not because you have back attack backups. I don't know. Also, Yuna is a pretty good stabilizer. I don't know, but I do think that. um, we're seeing a lot of interaction in the game right now because we're kind of forced to interact. And if you're not interacting, then we're relying on bursts. And is that good for the game? Is that bad for the game? Is that healthy? I don't really have much of an opinion on that, to be honest. But um, I guess where I'm at with the current meta is, people are playing what they want to play. This is the set that we're given. And I will say that I do think that for this set, two deck format's going to be way better than one deck format. um, because a lot of these, so, can you play? Oh, I need to go forward. I'm going to look real quick. I mean, outside of Warrior Light, right? I guess in theory, you could. Oh, you'd lose Larsa. I bet there's a way to play this if people wanted to go all in. You could play Chaos and Hythlodius as your two decks. It's kind of funny. But yeah, you do lose Larsa, so you would need to replace that with something. That's kind of funny though. But yeah, I do think that uh the meta's shifting a little bit in a sense of instead of it being like aggro slash chaos versus bursts, I think it's a little more the mid-range decks in that like burst category, they're all going to be facing each other too, right? So you're going to need to be able to not only beat aggro but beat the other mid-range decks. So that's where, Viridian playing with mono earth, that's a very very good place to be when you're trying to beat other mid-range decks. A lot of times your cards and your interactions are just cheaper than your opponents. So that's perfect. Like this was a really good call for the first event, literally because of that reason. You also had cards like both Shantotos, and then yeah, he had interaction with Titan, Miss Dragon, and Lev Six. Also Luna Freya to hit Lev Six. Uh, Also, if you're super committed, I guess. I don't know if I do this over Luna Freya. I guess it depends on the board state. But like turn one Une is a thing. So basically, just having a plan against both the aggressive decks and the mid range decks is where I'd want to be. If I were to play this weekend, the deck I would probably play, and this is I I do think that a lot of decks right now. I don't think there's one outlier. The only outlier I can think of is chaos being the most powerful thing to do in the game, but it does come at an angle that you can prepare for. So it's a little risky to play it, especially now. So I don't think I'd play chaos, but I do think it's still the strongest Final Fantasy I've ever been. It's kind of ridiculous. Um, I also don't think I would play the Hythlodius combo currently. Um, you might be able to get away with playing the Cleon version with Realm again. Uh, but I think that if people want to beat the deck, they can beat it. That's kind of my issue with those all-in decks is um, people can prepare for them at the deck building stage of the game. Just what deck are they bringing? So if you lose with it, not only do you have a fail rate with both of your all-in decks, if somebody prepares for it, then your percentage goes down even more. It's a little rough. Um, and also just throwing out random things like before people get a little on the like, oh well, you got sacked because they had the nuts, yada yada, with like Hythlo or with Chaos. It's like, well, you realize the odds of you drawing your out or outs depending on the situation. It's like the odds of them having their perfect 7 card hand is a lot lower than you having your like interaction if you prepare for it. right? If you have, you know, 7 to like 12 interaction cards, uh, if they're not going off on turn one, you should have even more. People can play with like the monsters that interact. I don't even. Oh man. Dragon came up as like a possible this old school dragon as like possible interaction, which is kind of funny to me. Um, this card used to be like the king of interaction back in the day. But stuff like that, right? Where it's just you don't it's not a summon, but you don't have to play a summon if they're not going off on turn one. And if they're going off on turn one, then they have the perfect 7 card hand, and it is what it is, right? And also they have to hit well, and a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff has to go their way. They have to, if it's the chaos deck, they have to not hit bursts. So if we're rolling the dice, you know, if you're taking 80%, you know, the famous 80-20, right? If you were to go into the matchup and you said that you were always 80% favored, would you take that? You probably would, right? But that also means you can't, I mean, you can be upset about the 20% if you want to, but the 20% isn't 0%. So you have to accept it for what it is. So, if I were to bring a deck back to that post event, I think a lot of decks are just mid right now. I don't see anything outlier. Um, but I would want a deck that interacts a lot. So I would probably be looking at Magisa, literally because I think Axstar is in a really good position. Shocker, right? Axstar being a good card. I think Axstar is in a good position right now, and the fire summons are pretty good. Also, I think Tyvis is just a really good card to accrue card advantage with. You just have a bunch of removal, and you have access to being control or aggro depending on, you know, the matchup. So I think that's where I would be. Other good calls, I think, again, mono earth. I think mono water is probably a thing. I could see if I could see mono fire also being a thing if we figured out the if you draw too many backups, what do you do kind of issue. And then I also think that monster decks are probably in a good spot. I would think that maybe somebody could bring a lightning water or a water earth monster deck and do pretty well with it. What else? But yeah, I do think there's a lot of different decks that people can play. I think ice aggro is probably a good spot as well. Like knights is probably a good spot. Uh, I think knights is good against the all in decks, assuming they don't win on the first turn, right? Um, yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. I'm gonna look through some of these deck lists real quick. Love six was the top of that. Love six again. I'm just looking at Love six is not here. Ooh, it's funny. Love six. So Canada didn't have Love six as their top card. This one is their second top card. But yeah, I think Scions is probably in a good spot too. It just says 13. Okay, interesting. Um, I don't know if I would play something like this exactly, but the thing with the 13 deck here is like it's another aggro deck that can attack at a different angle, right? Um, I think that's also probably a decent place to be, assuming that you have a good matchup against Knights and Chaos. Um, this deck clearly has a bunch of interaction if you need it, so that's kind of cool. No lip six there either. Okay. This is another chaos deck. Buckaboo. I think Buckaboo is really, really, really well positioned right now in the game. If you're planning to play those like hand dump strategies, it's good like to keep your opponent low on resources as well. I like backup Spiritus. If I were to play a Spiritus at all, I'd probably play backup Spiritus because forward Spiritus can be Kucheland, and that will double break your dark cards, and that's no good. So yeah. Scions is probably going to be a deck that I think I would like to see show up a little more as well. Again, interaction, lightning on water, bursts, or yeah, bursts are good, but also the limit break's good. Yeah. I think that wraps it up. I can't think of anything else. So yeah. Can't wait to see what happens in Raleigh this weekend. Cheering for my boy Tawa. Tawa, you got this, bro. And I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.